So again, welcome. Today's webinar is titled Tips for Teams, Maintaining a Productive and Collaborative Remote Work Environment. And my name is Sarah Hanson. I'm with Human Resources, Training and Organizational Development. I've been with t&od for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I have worked at the University of Florida since 2006 in various training and instructional design roles. So I'm really excited to be talking to you about this topic today. And I can say that I've survived the transition to remote working. It's been difficult. And it took me a little bit of time to get into a rhythm and to feel my flow and get a schedule set up in terms of being able to be as productive as I could. And I think the team that I work with, Training and Organizational Development, did a really good job of transitioning to remote work. And probably because about a year ago, we had a big building renovation and a lot of us started working remotely then. So we were starting to get familiar with Zoom and some of the technology already. So when we had to be sent home for remote working back in March, we had kind of a basis and an understanding of how to do that. But I've talked to a lot of teams on campus that have successfully made the transition to working remotely, and I'm going to share some of their strategies today, and I hope to hear from some of you as well so we can see what's working and maybe what's not working for teams out there. But I think we're in a good place to talk about this, you know, now that we've been working remotely for a little while and we found what works for us. We can really assess that and settle into a good rhythm. We may not have been in that place a few months ago when we were still, you know, getting used to the big change. So this is an unprecedented time. Our work lives and our home lives have changed drastically really over the last few months, and things really continue to shift and change as we start to think about returning to campus. And so things are still changing, and as a result, teams really have to rethink their ways of doing things and their current processes in order to be as productive and collaborative in a remote work environment. So teams have to find ways to stay connected, how to stay engaged with their projects. They have to make sure that team members feel safe and comfortable to contribute ideas, and to make sure that all team members feel like they have a voice. So I've talked to many teams on campus, and several supervisors have been really pleasantly surprised at how well their teams have adjusted and how well they've stayed connected and how productive they've been. I think where teams have struggled have been when they didn't have a really strong foundation with trust or a common or shared purpose. So today we're really going to discuss 6 main tips on how we can be as productive and collaborative as possible in a remote or office, really either remote or office working environment, but we're going to focus more on remote working today. So I have a quick poll for you just so I can get some feedback. And basically on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest score, I want you to let me know how well do you think your team has been able to transition to a remote work environment. So 10 really being the best, 1 being the lowest. And go ahead and click on your answer there, and then we can take a look at the results together. Just take a few minutes. Okay, just waiting on a few more people. Just kind of click on where you think your team falls in terms of how well you've transitioned. Okay, just a couple more seconds and then I'll share the results. So yeah, really interesting. It looks like most people rank their teams around 8 in terms of being able to transition to remote working. We had a couple people in the 6 and 7 range and a couple in the 9 or 10 range, but most people felt like their teams were above average in terms of their ability to transition to remote working. Awesome, thank you for sharing. Okay, so moving along. Just going to touch on the 6 main tips that I'm going to go over today in terms of maintaining a productive and collaborative remote work environment. Number one is staying focused on the bigger organizational goals for your areas. Number two is remaining actively engaged in team projects. I know sometimes we can kind of silo ourselves when we're remote working, so we just want to make sure that we're staying engaged. Number three is promoting psychological safety and trust among team members. Number four is finding ways to stay connected. So whether that's formally through team meetings or informally through social kind of get-togethers through Zoom or other activities, we'll talk about those. Number five is setting clear expectations and boundaries for your team, and specifically as to how you will work together in a remote setting. And then lastly, number six is documenting processes and procedures and making sure those processes stay up to date and are accessible to everybody. So let's take a look at number one here, staying focused on big goals. That's important whether you're working in the office or working remotely. And probably before making the shift to remote work, you had regular meetings or goal setting or goal update meetings that you would all get together and talk about your goals for the organization or for your department. Perhaps during your bi-weekly or weekly departmental meetings, you would give a quick goal update or talk about bigger goals that are happening within your division. I know in our areas, sometimes we post goals, big goals, or we have printouts that kind of articulate what the goals are for our department and our division. And then hopefully you're talking about the organizational goals and departmental goals when you're setting your individual team goals, just to make sure that you're in alignment with what the department and the organization is focused on. So staying focused on the big goals is really important. Especially because when we start working remotely, we can become disconnected from the big picture. So it's important to continue to find the ways for the team to understand how their work fits in and have sort of a shared sense of purpose. So some strategies that some of the departments that I've been working with mentioned was, I know over in IFAS, there's like a weekly departmental email update that goes out. And it talks about, any upcoming deadlines, important events, just things to stay up to date on, but also kind of a mention of organizational and departmental goals and any work that's being done towards those. So it's just a weekly kind of email blast thing that they do. I've also talked to some teams that kind of incorporate a goal update as part of their weekly or bi-weekly Zoom meetings. So just to kind of keep that fresh and on the forefront of our minds. Number three, I know a lot of organizational goals can be posted in collaborative workspaces like Teams or Trello. I know architectural and engineering, I talked with them and some of their teams, and they actually have a thread where they discuss some of their organizational goals for personal excellence or performance excellence. And then they post, some of the work that's being done towards those goals and also ideas on how to further develop those goals. So I thought that was really interesting and helpful. And then again, making sure that team members are setting goals that are in alignment with the larger organizational goals. I personally do a lot of work with teams. So I know in HR, as part of our vision and larger organizational goal, we try to create a competitive advantage for UF through people. So that means individual excellence, high functioning teams, and excellent leaders. And so some of my individual goals would be around providing resources and strategies for teams. And so that really is in alignment with our larger HR goals. So just as an example. So that's really the first piece of advice in terms of maintaining a productive and collaborative remote work environment, is staying focused on those big goals and not letting those fall to the wayside. So I would say number two is remain actively engaged in team projects. I think sometimes when we make the shift to remote working, we can have a tendency to focus more on individual tasks and projects. So we want to make sure we're staying engaged with those team initiatives and team goals. And that may mean that you have to break out into smaller sub-teams. Smaller teams are a little more agile, they can communicate and collaborate better. So that could be one strategy for you. And in addition to that, you want to try to find a central location for tracking projects where everyone can see, where deadlines can be posted and subtasks and checklist items can be shared. So a couple of strategies that some of the teams on campus had mentioned for making sure that they stay engaged in team projects would be scheduling brainstorming or project planning sessions. So this may mean just huddling around the project. What are some upcoming deadlines? What still needs to be done? And what are some ideas for moving the project forward? And also taking time to celebrate successes. I know in our team, we have in our office a wall of wins. So we'll post like a little sticky note or a piece of paper that says, you know, we've had a really successful GBAS event or a new training became released. And so we can celebrate that as a team. But that could be done in Teams or in another collaborative workspace online. And then managers really need to continue to assign team projects just to make sure that team members are continuing to engage with each other, and then encourage team members to plug into additional tasks, work groups, team projects, and so on. I know with our team, we've had a lot of task forces and work groups that have been huddling around, you know, the idea of offering a lot of Zoom and virtual training sessions. So there's a lot of opportunities to plug in to some team projects. So in the chat, I just want you to respond to a quick question here. What are some strategies that your team has used to stay actively engaged in team projects? So kind of resisting that urge to work on just individual tasks. How has your team stayed actively engaged in your team projects? So just throw that out in the chat for me so I can see. Okay, regular Zoom check-ins. Yeah, very good. So with the team or with whatever sub-team that's working on the task. Good. Yeah, I need to be better about this. Yeah, it is a challenge. You know, you're so busy and it's hard transitioning to remote work. So trying to build that into your day. Planner and Trello, weekly conference calls, Zoom check-ins. Microsoft Teams, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Good. Lots of Zoom meetings, right? Bi-weekly Zoom staff meetings, one individual and then one as a group. I like the combination of having one-on-one, but also the group meetings as well. Monthly all staff Zoom meetings. That's good. Yeah, it's maybe something with the whole team and then also with sub-teams or task forces within the team. Good. Dropbox to upload documents. Very good. Phone calls as well. Okay, the phone works too. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's move on. These are some project management tools that I've heard a lot of the teams using on campus. Teams is one that our team has been using since we've transferred to remote working. And we like it because it tracks projects and deadlines. We can assign projects to individual people or a group. We can chat or message each other. We can use the video conferencing option, and we can also share, update, and simultaneously work on documents together that we're working on as a team. I know Google Docs and SharePoint have also been used for sharing documents and updating documents and files, simultaneously. In Google Docs, you can also comment or chat related to the documents that you're sharing. I know that mechanical and aerospace engineering was using Trello, and there may be a cost associated with that, but it works similar to Teams with boards and then lists of different tasks that are categorized, and then you can track projects and connect socially, chat, and all of that. So I see several of you are using Teams. Are there any other project management tools that you guys are using out there that has worked well for you? Okay, good. Zoom, Teams chatting, Teams chat call. So it looks like you're using the video conferencing option, which is good. Okay, Trello and SharePoint. Good. Like I say, those were the ones that stood out to me and that I found that most teams were using. Smart Sheets. Okay, good. Planner and Teams. And that's what I was going to mention right now, actually, is a good transition. This is just kind of a snapshot of Microsoft Teams Planner, and this is what our team uses for project management. So each of those rectangles is a task or a project, and in Planner it's called a card. So you can title the project or the task, you can assign people, and then you can place it into various buckets like not started, in progress, or completed, or even out for review. And then within each of those task cards, you can indicate whether you're in progress, what the priority is, due dates, any checklist items, which is nice if you're working as part of a team, so you can see what's been done, what still needs to be done. You can even add attachments. So a lot of nice tracking features for team projects. And then when you're done, instead of checking it off on a paper checklist, you move that to the completed bucket. And so the team can see really quick in a snapshot, like what are all the projects that our team is working on, what still needs to be done, what's in progress, how long has it been in progress. So it can also be kind of an accountability piece to make sure that teams are staying on task and not falling behind on their projects. So team members can kind of hold each other accountable. Hey, it looks like, this task has been out for quite a while. Can you give us an update? And then also likewise, if one team member is kind of drowning and has a lot on their plate, you can shift things around. So it's a nice place to be able to see all of the team projects and what's still, being worked on. Okay, very good. So again, yeah, a lot of you are using Teams and Planner. It looks like you're using chat, daily calls. Some are using Skype and things like that just for quick questions and communication. So moving on to our third tip for maintaining a productive and collaborative remote work environment, and that is promoting psychological safety. I think when we shift to remote working, there's a risk that team members could lose trust and some of that psychological safety that may have existed in the office before, which creates a culture of openness and participation and risk-taking. So in the remote working environment, we kind of missed out on those informal opportunities to have conversations, and team members can feel distant. So we have to take some special measures to make sure that we're maintaining that psychological safety. And what does that mean? So according to Harvard business professor Amy Edmondson, psychological safety is the shared belief held by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking, and also a sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. So when psychological safety exists on a team members will speak openly and they'll share ideas, they'll be honest and openly admit mistakes, they'll support diversity of ideas and thoughts and allow for risk-taking. And as a result, teams that have high levels of psychological safety tend to be a little more open-minded and resilient, and they're also more motivated and persistent towards achieving their goal and finding solutions to problems or issues. And they also tend to be more creative because they're not afraid that they're going to be judged by their fellow team members. So it's really important. It's really a foundation for building a productive and collaborative team. So I wanted to mention this because, again, it's not just for remote teams. It's for teams when we're working in the office as well. But we just want to make sure when things are shifting and changing that that safety piece is in place and it's strong. So this is kind of a quick self-assessment that you can rate your team in various areas in terms of how safe your team members are feeling and if you have that psychological safety in place. So one is, we respect and value everyone's contributions. We don't, we're not afraid to ask for help or for clarification. We openly discuss issues. We don't hold back. We're not afraid to engage in some healthy debate or conflict. Number 4, we accept or even celebrate our different ideas. We want that diversity of thought. We want new and creative ideas brought to the table. Number 5, it's okay or even expected to take risks, okay? That we might make a mistake, but that's okay. We're in a safe environment. We can admit, we can learn from those mistakes. And so those are kind of the 6 main areas that you can assess your team. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and throw another poll out there for you guys. And on a scale of 1 to 5 this time, I want you to rate how psychologically safe your team is. So very unsafe, not safe, somewhat safe, very safe. I guess there's just 4 categories there. So let me know where you think your team falls in terms of the level of psychological safety or trust now that you've transitioned over to remote working. Okay, very good. The results are still coming in. It looks like somewhat safe or very safe. are where most of you are falling. There are some of you that say that you feel unsafe or not safe, and maybe that was the case before you transitioned to remote work, or maybe that transition has thrown off the safety on your team. So it's something to take a look at and kind of revisit to talk about on your teams. Okay, very good. So I'm going to end the poll, and then I'm going to share the results so that you can see it. A few of you said very unsafe or not safe, and then most of you were in the either somewhat safe or very safe category. So that's reassuring, but it's always good to take a look at that from time to time when there's a time of change or you have a new team member, just to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable and able to contribute to the group. So I have on the next slide just some quick tips for increasing psychological safety on your teams. And the first one is just seeing colleagues as humans, right? Our colleagues have the same feelings, beliefs, needs, not exactly the same, but we all have these, needs and feelings, and we're all human. And when we're interacting with our colleagues, especially those that we may have some tension or difficulty interacting with, just focusing on the positive and what you really like about that person, that can help put you in a positive frame when you're interacting. The second one is promoting healthy conflict, just not being afraid to engage in healthy debate. That's a lot of times where our best ideas and creative solutions come from. So not shying away from that, being open to it. The third one there is ensuring everyone has a voice. We want to make sure, and I think sometimes in the Zoom world or in video conferencing, some people may be lost a little bit in that environment. So we want to make sure that each person has a chance to contribute to the ideas and to opinions and to share their side. So just making an extra effort to make sure everyone has a voice. The fourth one there is being curious and creative. So just being open to new ideas, to changes, to learning, being inquisitive. And then the fifth one there is focusing on trust. So really having a strong foundation of trust and mutual respect on the team, making sure that everybody feels comfortable, they're not judged, they're not going to be shamed for making a wrong decision or making a mistake. And then the last one, which I think is really important, especially as we've transitioned to remote working, is to set in place some structures and norms on how the team will interact. And you can write these down, document them, put them on Teams or whatever collaborative workspace that you're using so everybody can see it and be reminded. Some just general, sample norms or examples that you could use would be: we don't interrupt, during meetings. Everyone has an opportunity to share their opinion. Nobody is shamed, nobody is blamed. No questions are considered stupid. And then in a remote work environment, it may be things like, these are our working hours. This is when we're available. This is how we'll contact each other. Maybe that's using chat instead of email and so forth. So setting up some behaviors and norms and document them would be really, really helpful for the team as they make a big transition to working remotely. So what are some other norms or structures that maybe you've put in place on your team just to make sure that you're interacting appropriately and everybody feels comfortable? Anything else that you would add? And you can put that out in the chat. I know one thing our team has done is just made sure that we've clearly communicated our working hours to everybody. And if we have to be out, we're letting everybody know, just so there's no confusion about what our work schedule and availability is. Okay, I like that one. Speaking from the I, not from the assumed we, definitely. Weekly supervisor emails, good, like a weekly update. We do that as well, that's good. Anything else, any other norms or structures that you've put in place, specifically since you've been working remotely? Okay. I know one thing, I was talking to mechanical and aerospace engineering, and one of their norms or structures that they put in place was, the video had to be turned on during their weekly Zoom meetings, just so everybody has that face time and can see each other and have that comfort. Letting everyone know about our meeting schedules, yeah, definitely. letting them know which meetings are required, which ones are optional, and then maybe even what's expected during the meeting, right? Like you'll be muted, or you'll have your microphones on, or maybe you have to raise your hand to participate. So having some norms or rules around meetings is actually a really good point. All right, so moving on. So the fourth tip for maintaining a productive and collaborative remote work environment is staying connected as a team. And we've touched on some of this already, but whether that be formal meetings that we're holding or informal, like social Zoom calls that we get together on, we want to make sure that we're providing our teams plenty of chances to connect and to stay up to speed when things are changing and shifting really quickly. So these are some of the collaboration tools that I've heard that many teams are using. And I know that Skype is a popular one, and that might be good for like a quick question or an update. But a lot of teams are using Microsoft Teams and Zoom to interact on a regular basis with their meetings because there's the video conferencing option. And like I say, over in mechanical and aerospace engineering, they have a norm or a structure in place where the video has to be turned on so everyone can see each other and have a chance to share. And they also try to make sure that everybody has a chance to share during the meetings and share any struggles that they're having, quick updates on the work that they're completing, and where they might need help or assistance. So I thought that was really good. So in terms of team meetings, I just want to talk about that a little bit, because as we've made the shift to remote working, we want to make sure that we're having productive and collaborative team meetings, making sure everyone participates. And part of that may mean that you want to transition to shorter, more Scrum style meetings. I know a lot of teams have done that. Our team does a weekly stand-up meeting. So each person has to share what they've completed for that week, what we're working on for the next week, and then any help or assistance that we need. And in the beginning, when we were working remotely, we even would share like any strategies that we had for using Zoom or the new technology that we're using. And that was really helpful too. But each team member contributes, and we only have 1 minute to share. So we actually do time that, and we hold to it. Everybody gets a minute. But it's an opportunity for everybody to share. And then we stay up to date on what everybody's working on. So again, making sure that each member has a chance to participate, I think is important, because less talkative members may become lost in Zoom meetings. It can be difficult to navigate when it's appropriate to interject during a Zoom meeting and not interrupt the main speaker. So you just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, everybody has a chance to share, and kind of maybe either go around round robin or even sending an agenda in advance and indicating who will be presenting on each topic, and kind of spread that out so it's not just one person running the meetings each time. So that would be a couple of strategies that you could use. Also, allowing pause during meetings is good. If we need to think through things and allow time to respond. Just because we're in Zoom doesn't mean we have to be talking the whole time. We can pause and reflect and give people time to process. And then also having some rules or norms for meetings would be really helpful. So a couple of you mentioned talking about I, not we. Maybe it's making sure that people stay muted, making sure people raise their hands if they want to participate. So some just basic rules and guidelines for conducting online and Zoom meetings. I know over in mechanical and aerospace engineering, the director there has kind of a virtual open door policy where employees can, ask questions during set times, or, share concerns or anything like that. So trying to maintain kind of that open door policy would be really helpful, I think, during this time where there's a lot of questions and changes and concerns. So in addition to formal meetings, we also want to make sure that we're planning some social time with the team to interact. People are social, and so people can quickly start feeling isolated if they don't have time to interact with team members, don't have that opportunity just to stop by somebody's cubicle or office and share or talk, or in the lunchroom there's not time just to get updates from people and hear how they're doing. So it's nice to schedule some time. I know some teams do do like a weekly activity or a weekly challenge. I know over in mechanical engineering, they were doing like a weekly activity, like you share a baby picture and somebody had, other people had to guess who it was, things like that. I know some teams would schedule like a 1-hour game time and they would use Jackbox games or like an escape room type activity and just have team members do something fun and interactive and just light, just because there's so much going on and a stressful time. So that was really helpful to them. And then other teams would just have built-in time either before or after their scheduled meetings for people to talk and just casually get caught up with each other. So just making, meeting times light and giving time for people to share, their struggles or something personal that they've been working on, a project at home, can just kind of keep the tone light and have some time for people to get caught up with each other. And aside from social time, you can schedule other types of interaction with the team, like a feedback session. I know in our team, when we have a presentation that we're giving, we want to do a practice run through, we can get team members together to offer feedback. You could also have your team attend a training together and then have a discussion afterwards, or maybe just share some strategies. I know over in facility services, I know that one of the financial teams over there was meeting every morning. So they shifted to a morning meeting every day, and they shared some strategies about how to use technology to interact with each other. And then they would just provide any updates and things that were going on that day. So those are just a few ideas and strategies that I think some folks on campus have been using and has been successful, just to keep that social interaction. Also, I know over in IFAS, in Teams, they have kind of a warm and fuzzy channel. And so they post like funny memes or just an inspirational message or, something funny to share. So that's just another way to kind of connect socially, is just through chats and messages. Teams is a really good place to do that, but I'm sure the other platforms have that option. So in the chat, I would love to hear from you guys to see how you have stayed connected as a team during this kind of transition to remote working. So in the chat, just let me know, what are some things that your team has done to continue to connect, like socially, maybe different types of meetings that you hold, maybe trainings that you've been attending. What are some things that you've done? I like that, scavenger hunts. That's cute. Via Zoom. That's fun. Book club, really good idea. Jeopardy and trivia, I like that. I know mechanical and aerospace engineering was doing like a Pictionary or a drawing game. Trivia, okay, good. Skype, and the trivia could be something quickly you do like right before a departmental meeting, just to kind of get things going, get people interacting. I know some of the groups did like a quick poll at the beginning, like how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as working from home, and they would do a quick poll, kind of a pulse check for the team, which is fun. Okay, Skype. Standing office hours, yes. That was a couple of other teams that I had spoke with. So people can pop in with questions, so just kind of a open door time. Our team feels a bit far-flung. Yeah, definitely. Each Friday we have a Zoom meeting named Coffee Break. Oh, I like that. Virtual tea party, that sounds fun. Scavenger hunts, yeah, those have been popular. I know I have young kids, and so on some of their Zoom calls, they would have little scavenger hunts where they have to go around and find something like a certain color or something that's special to them, and then they have to share that with the group, which is fun. I know some, I had read online where some teams were doing like little tours, like video tours of their house, like, hey, this is my back porch and this is where I sit and have meetings, and this is where I do majority of the working. So it's kind of interesting to see other people's workspaces as well. But I like the coffee break idea, tea break, just kind of a virtual water cooler place for people to gather. You could even just have like an open Zoom meeting time, like every Thursday from 2 to 3 o'clock, and people could pop in and out and share, just like you would in the lunchroom or, in the hallway interacting with each other. You could do that virtually. So very good. I like those ideas. So moving on, we have 2 more tips that we're going to cover today. on how to maintain a productive and collaborative remote work environment. And this next one is number 5, setting clear expectations and boundaries. I think this is really important as we shift to remote work, is to make sure that we're clear in our expectations on how the work is going to be accomplished and any boundaries that we have as an individual or as a team. I think in remote working, the lines between work and home life can become blurred a little bit, and we want to make sure that we're creating kind of a healthy balance for ourselves and for our teams, and to set some clear expectations on how we can interact and be as productive as we possibly can. So some expectations that you'll want to set up, and this is best to do from the beginning, but I know that we've been working remotely now for a little while. So as we start to shift to returning to campus, or returning to kind of a mixed work schedule, or maybe you're working some remote, some in the office, you'll want to set up some expectations for your team together. Like, how will the team work together? Will we break off into smaller sub-teams? Will we meet on a weekly or bi-weekly basis? How will we keep each other updated on projects? Are we going to use Trello, Microsoft Teams, or some other platform? Are we going to set up rules like, please, don't email or call after 8 p.m., something like that, to kind of maintain some healthy boundaries? And then where are we going to document processes and procedures? So really kind of outlining how the team will work together in this new environment and this new setting. You'll also want to make sure that it's clearly communicated what everyone's work hours is. Maybe post that in Teams, just so that if you're unsure, so that you're not reaching out to somebody while they're off. What meetings are mandatory, which ones are optional. It sounds like those were some norms and structures that some of you had already been discussing among your teams. What's the best way to reach each other? This is really important. Are we going to email, call each other? Are we going to use chats or Skype? I know a lot of teams mentioned that it was really helpful to transition to using chats or messages instead of so many emails, because working remotely may mean that we're getting inundated with more emails. So that kind of helped keep the number of emails a little bit lower. What are your current goals and deadlines? How are we going to share that with the group? Are we going to use Teams Planner? Are we going to have a weekly stand-up meeting to discuss those? So we want to make sure we have a plan in place for sharing those goals and deadlines and keeping each other accountable. And then lastly, which I think is really important, is making sure there's an outlet or a way for team members to communicate if they are feeling overwhelmed. And one of you mentioned in the chat just having those open hours, the open door policy during maybe certain times of the day, where a team member can shoot you a message or give you a call if they're needing support in a particular area, or if they're feeling overwhelmed. So having a plan in place on how we can address those concerns, and just really being on the lookout for signs of stress among team members and signs of overload, so that you can help them find resources and point them in the right direction. So another thing is kind of along these same lines of expectations and boundaries is teams may want to revisit their mission, values, and their operating principles and determine if any adjustments need to be made. I know in our office, one of our values is professionalism. So when we made the shift to working remotely, we really had to think through how we were going to maintain that high level of customer service while we were not going to be, in the office answering phone calls or providing face-to-face training. Or even meetings from our organizational development group. How are we going to still continue to serve our customers? So we had to think through that and come up with a plan on how we were going to respond to phone calls, how frequently we were going to check the incoming messages, and how we were going to just provide additional support to our customers during this shifting time. So I know many of you probably have had to have some of those discussions as well, in terms of serving customers, serving students, whatever your role might be. I was just looking in the chat and somebody mentioned using virtual backgrounds with your favorite vacation photo. That's a really good idea. I like that idea. So picking a photo from one of your vacations and then using that as something to share, really good. Okay, so I want to mention this team building activity. that mechanical and aerospace engineering shared with me when I was talking with them. It's called How Do You Operate? So I really like it because it combines a lot of what we're talking about today when it comes to building connection with the team, fostering psychological safety, and also setting some expectations and boundaries. It's called How Do You Operate? And so basically in engineering, they just had each employee on the team answer these questions, and they put them into little PowerPoint like slide decks and shared them that way during one of their meetings. And then they also posted it in Microsoft Teams so they could refer to it and review it later. But it's just answering some basic questions like, what is your preferred work environment? What time of day do you do your best work? Is that the morning or the afternoon? What's the best way to communicate with you? Do you prefer chat or email or a phone call? How do you prefer to receive feedback? You know, one-on-one in a private setting, during performance reviews. What are things that you need, especially things that maybe you need to feel safe, and things that you need to do your best work? How do you learn best? And what do you struggle with? And I think they even kind of customized that last question in terms of what are you struggling with when it comes to working remotely. But having each person answer this and kind of share out was a really good team building activity, and it really gets at like that psychological safety piece we've been talking about, making sure there's clear expectations and boundaries based on, you know, how people prefer to interact and work with each other. So I really like this one, and I thought I would pass it along as one that you could use as well. I know they had a new employee, and so it's particularly helpful when they were onboarding somebody new to be able to share that with everybody. So the last tip that I have for today in terms of maintaining a productive and collaborative work environment is to document processes and procedures. So with so much shifting and changing as we had moved to remote working, it's really important to have some clear processes and procedures in place, and also to have those accessible in a central location. As things are shifting and changing, we want to be able to make sure that everybody can access updated processes and so forth, so that we don't have any bottlenecks or delays in getting our work done. It's not like working in the office where you can just stop by and ask somebody in their cubicle, hey, you know, I'm confused about step number 3. Can you walk me through that? We have to wait to text them or to send them a message and wait for them to get back to us. So it can create delays, and we just want to make sure that everybody's up to date and making sure that they're following the new processes and procedures clearly. I know that in our team, when we shifted to remote working, we had to shift all of our in-person trainings to virtual trainings. So we had to document like how we were going to create the Zoom session and how we were going to make sure all of our customers received the Zoom link and information about using Zoom. We had to train all our instructors on how to use Zoom and how to conduct virtual training sessions. How we were going to track attendance and process our roster. So a lot of our processes changed drastically, and we had a lot of new processes that we had to document and get placed into teams in a central location so that everybody knew what was going on and there was, you know, no confusion. So a couple of other strategies that I've heard from other teams on campus is reviewing workflows. I know one of the sub-teams over in mechanical and aerospace engineering said that they had to go through all of their workflows. They had to make updates and document everything that had changed and then put those in a central location for people to access. So, and Teams has the ability to store documents. I know you mentioned also SharePoint. Google Docs, some of those other central storage locations where you can all access everything and make things up to date and also work on those documents simultaneously. And then update them on a regular basis, of course, right? So some of you are asking, can you email some of the tips? And definitely I can. So I have a bunch of the strategies that I've collected from the teams on campus that I can share with you. And then I have just kind of a quick overview of what we talked about today in terms of the 6 main tips to focus on when you're working in a remote environment to make sure that you're as productive as possible. So I'll definitely send that in an email afterwards. So thank you for that. So in the chat, I just want to get some feedback from you on the last two tips that we were talking about, the clear expectations and boundaries, and then clear processes and procedures. So for the first one, were there any tips that you have from your team in terms of setting clear expectations on how you were going to work remotely? Is there anything that your team did that was particularly helpful? And you can just throw that in the chat. How did you set clear expectations, like your work schedule, when you were available, what the meetings would be? Just kind of share those out in the chat. I know with our team, you know, we did post our work schedules. We made sure that everybody had access to that. If we were going to change or modify our work schedule, we would share that with the team. We created, oh good, Anna's group, they created a document with expectations as a group. So it was something they worked on all together. Written details of expectations, again, just not discussing them, but jotting them down for everyone to see. Okay, blocking off time on your calendar for virtual in office to Skype or use Teams to call. Okay, I like that, just setting up times that you're going to regularly meet and make sure everyone stays connected. So that's good to do on a regular basis. I know with our team, we just kind of kept our regular meeting schedule and just shifted from the in-person to the Zoom meetings. And we would do a smaller team meeting and then our larger meeting with the whole group. So we would meet in with both groups. Okay, I like that. Teams Excel sheets where you would detail all of your daily logs on different tabs. Okay, so that's kind of where you stored your project centrally. Okay, open office hours so people can join in if they needed. Daily logs on the shared drive on what you're working on, very good. Using Outlook, okay, for mandatory trainings, and then Teams channels for particular topics. Good. I like this one. Everyone had to be available on Skype and understand how to use VPN or remote desktop, attending regular meetings, and email me a daily log. Yes, definitely. I think it's good with remote working just to spend a little time with the team understanding how to use all the technology, because that is a big learning curve for many. So that can be an area of stress. So at the beginning, just making sure everyone is trained on the tools, whether that's VPN or Skype or Zoom, and then making sure that you're available for questions. Very good. I like those tips. And then the last one I wanted to get your feedback on, how did you maintain processes and procedures? What are some tips that you have on your team to make sure that the processes and procedures are up to date and in a central location? You can share that out in the chat as well. And some of that may be through Teams. It looks like a lot of you are using Teams channels and Planner. So that might be where you're, storing some of your processes and procedures, because that is centrally located. But let me know if there's any other ways that you've made sure that your processes are up to date and everybody can access them. Some of you mentioned an Excel sheet that's stored in Teams, so everyone can go in and update what's been done, what still needs to be done. So that's kind of a project tracking piece too. A wiki in Teams, okay, awesome. We haven't used that before. Okay. We have an AT SharePoint, and we create COVID-19 pages with updates from HR, leadership, etc. Oh, I like that. So something just specific for COVID-19 updates, because there's a lot coming at us in terms of new developments and what we need to do to return to work and things like that. So just one place, central place where people can go and get those updates. Yeah, it's easily accessible. Very good. Okay, so kind of as a wrap up and a summary, today we talked about 6 main tips in order to maintain a productive and collaborative remote work environment, with the first one being focusing on big goals, whether those are your organizational or department goals, just making sure those are kind of threaded into your regular meetings or your shared workspaces. Actively engaging in team projects, so making sure that the team's meeting regularly and pushing projects forward, brainstorming or problem solving when necessary. Number 3 was making sure that you have psychological safety or trust. Remember, that's a huge foundation for high-performing teams, so we want to make sure everyone feels like they can contribute and be open and take risks. The 4th one was staying connected as a team, so making sure that whether that's formally through meetings or informally through social interactions, games, interactivity, things like that, that we're taking time to do that as well. Establishing clear expectations and boundaries, maybe norms or rules that you have in place just for interacting in a remote work environment, so everyone knows your work schedule, when you prefer to be contacted, how the best way to contact you is, those type of expectations. And then lastly, just having clear processes and procedures, making sure those are in a central location where everyone can access those and update as needed. It looks like Andrea had something else to share. We have an established routine and individual check-in meetings at the beginning of the week, and then a group meeting at the end of the week with daily logs that are updated by Wednesday. So yeah, kind of a combination of things to make sure that everyone's staying in the know. I like that, Andrea. So a combination of individual check-ins, group check-in, and then daily logs on what each person is contributing. Very good. I think that combined approach is really helpful. So if you don't have any other specific questions for me, we're going to be wrapping up the session today. Feel free to hang out for a few minutes after I wrap up here if you have any specific questions about maintaining a high productive remote work environment. I have a few minutes here that I can spend with you, but thank you so much for joining me, and best of luck to you as you navigate this new world, and let us know if training and development can be of any assistance.